The first words he threw at her hurt more than the wound she was stitching on his shoulder. He lay on the narrow bed of the small village clinic, pale, angry, dressed in torn expensive hunting clothes, and when the pain burned through him he shouted, "You're only good for sewing up corpses," his voice echoing through the thin walls so everyone outside could hear. And for a brief second her fingers paused above the thread, but her eyes stayed calm. Her name was Anna. She had been the only doctor in that forgotten village for 7 years, a place where roads broke before they were fixed and people paid for treatment with vegetables, milk, or simple gratitude. She never complained. She treated drunks, crying children, exhausted mothers, and lonely old men with the same steady care. And now she treated him, a wealthy businessman flown in by helicopter after a hunting accident, a man who owned factories, land, influence, and believed he owned respect as well. He hated that his life depended on a quiet woman in a faded white coat, and he tried to regain control the only way he knew, by humiliating her. He mocked the clinic, the village, her education, her hands, and she said nothing because anger would have made her hands shake and she refused to let pride cost a life. Sadness settled inside her like cold rain. She remembered arriving here young and hopeful, believing skill and kindness were enough. Yet in moments like this she felt small and invisible. When she finished stitching she calmly gave instructions and walked out. Villagers avoided her eyes because they had heard everything but no one dared defend her. Power frightened them. That night she sat alone in her small wooden house listening to the wind against the windows and wondered if she should leave. If patience was just another word for accepting disrespect. She felt helpless, trapped by duty and by the quiet trust of people who depended on her. And she allowed herself to cry softly, not out of weakness but to release the weight in her chest. Days passed and the wealthy man was taken back to the city, his convoy disappearing in dust. Life returned to coughs, fevers, and routine checkups, yet something had shifted inside her. Not anger, not revenge, but a quiet question about whether justice might arrive slowly instead of loudly. 2 weeks later black cars appeared again at the edge of the village, engines humming like distant thunder, and this time he stepped out alone. No guards, no raised voice, his face tense but controlled. He knocked on her door himself and when she opened it he said quietly that the wound hurt again, that city doctors could not understand the pain, that perhaps she had noticed something they had missed. She examined him carefully and realized the complication was caused by his refusal to follow her instructions, by his belief that rules did not apply to him. She explained it without blame, simply stating facts, and for the first time he looked afraid. She told him she could help but only with time, patience, and trust, words that felt unfamiliar in his world. He began visiting regularly, sitting in the waiting room like everyone else, watching her treat a miner with damaged lungs, a pregnant woman with high fever, a child who had fallen from a tree. He saw that she never rushed, never asked about wealth or status, only about pain, and slowly something inside him softened. One evening during a heavy storm he arrived soaked and silent and stood in the corner while she stitched a deep cut on a young boy under the dim light of a backup lamp after the power failed. Her voice steady, her hands precise, and shame finally burned through him because those same hands he had insulted were saving lives without applause. Later he apologized quietly, without witnesses, and she nodded but did not rush to comfort him, because dignity does not demand revenge yet it does not forget easily. Soon news broke that several of his factories were under investigation for unsafe conditions, injured workers speaking out, authorities demanding answers. The media that once praised him began to question him, and for the first time he did not hide behind influence. He admitted negligence publicly, promised reform, and began restructuring his business. Profits shrank but transparency grew. He asked Anna about the village, about what people needed most. She told him about the broken bridge that delayed ambulances, the outdated equipment, the lack of opportunity for young families. She spoke without expectation, and months later construction quietly began. A new road, better supplies, improvements that did not carry his name but carried impact. Then one winter night there was another knock at her door. Urgent and uneven. His younger sister had been in a car accident on an icy road nearby, the city ambulance delayed by weather, and without hesitation Anna grabbed her medical bag and followed him into the freezing darkness. At the crash site twisted metal glinted under headlights, the young woman barely conscious, breathing shallow, and Anna moved with calm authority, stabilizing her neck, controlling the bleeding, giving firm instructions to the few men gathered. Victor stood nearby helpless, watching the woman he once belittled fight to keep his sister alive. When the ambulance finally arrived, the patient was stable enough to survive the journey, and days later doctors confirmed that immediate action had saved her life. Word spread quietly through the village, not through headlines but through conversations, and respect for Anna deepened into something unshakable. Shortly after, Victor gathered villagers in the square without cameras or speeches prepared by assistants. He admitted his arrogance, his blindness, his failures. He thanked Anna openly, not as a subordinate but as an equal, and the applause that followed was soft yet sincere. Investigations later revealed that a warehouse fire had been sabotaged by former partners resisting his reforms, and because he had chosen honesty instead of denial, he survived the scandal. Spring arrived, and with it the opening of a modern regional medical center near the village. Bright halls, updated equipment, fair salaries for staff, no grand plaque with his name. Anna was offered leadership and accepted, remaining as steady as ever. She did not become louder or prouder. She simply continued working. Children ran through clean corridors, elderly patients received proper care without traveling miles, and the village slowly transformed. Schools received funding, small businesses opened along the new road. Hope returned cautiously but steadily. One evening as the sun set golden over the fields, Victor asked her if she had ever hated him for that first insult. She answered honestly that she had felt hurt and powerless, but hatred would have chained her to that moment forever. And she had chosen patience instead, because patience guards dignity better than anger ever could. He understood then that her silence had never been weakness, it had been strength controlled and directed. Years passed and the story of that insult faded into memory, replaced by visible change, yet both of them carried it as a reminder. He is a warning against arrogance, she is proof of endurance. And during the anniversary celebration of the medical center, the villagers gathered not for praise but for gratitude. Children laughing, music playing softly, lights glowing warmly against the evening sky. Victor stood among them simply as a man, no longer untouchable, no longer feared, and Anna stood quietly near the entrance watching people she had served for years, and in that calm exchange of glances between them there was no bitterness left, only mutual respect. The man who once shouted that she was fit only to sow the dead had learned the value of life, and the woman who endured humiliation without shouting had proven that true justice is not loud revenge but lasting transformation. And as night settled gently over the village, she understood that remaining steady when it would have been easier to break had changed not only one powerful man but an entire community, and that quiet victory was stronger than any revenge could ever be.